Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the United Earth Space Station Harmony, watching the sleek alien vessel approach through the reinforced transparasteel windows. The ship gleamed like liquid mercury against the backdrop of stars, its surface rippling with patterns that seemed to defy the laws of physics. For 3 days now, the vessel had remained silent to all communication attempts, hovering just outside the station's defensive perimeter. The entire diplomatic corps had been on edge since the ship's arrival. This wasn't the first alien contact humanity had experienced since venturing beyond their solar system 50 years ago. But something about this encounter felt different. The vessel bore no markings of any known species from the Galactic Confederation, and its design suggested a level of technology that made even their most advanced allies seem primitive by comparison. "Commander Chen, they're finally responding," Lieutenant Martinez called out from the communications console, his voice tight with anticipation. "They're requesting permission to dock." Sarah straightened her uniform and nodded. "Grant them access to Base 7. Have security teams standing by, but keep them out of sight. We don't want to appear hostile." She paused, then added, "And notify Ambassador Okoye. Tell him our mysterious visitors are ready to talk." The docking procedure was flawless, executed with a precision that spoke of advanced automated systems. As the alien vessel settled into the bay, Sarah made her way to the reception area, accompanied by a small diplomatic team. Ambassador Okoye, a tall man with graying temples and decades of interstellar negotiation experience, stood at her right. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's chief xenobiologist, fidgeted nervously on her left. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. The being that emerged was undeniably female in appearance, though her features were unlike anything in their xenological databases. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that seemed to shift between deep purple and midnight blue depending on how the light struck it. Her eyes were large and multifaceted, like clusters of sapphires, and her hair, if it could be called that, appeared to be made of fine strands of bioluminescent fiber that pulsed with soft light. She wore a form-fitting garment that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, and she moved with a grace that made even the artificial gravity seem optional. But what struck Sarah most was the expression on the alien's face, a mixture of determination, desperation, and something that looked remarkably like hope. "I am Zephyra of the Luminari," the alien woman said, her voice carrying harmonics that made it sound like a chorus speaking in unison. "I have traveled across 17 star systems to find you. I require a human." The reception area fell silent. Ambassador Okoye cleared his throat, his diplomatic training kicking in. "Welcome to Harmony Station, Zephyra of the Luminari. I am Ambassador David Okoye, representing the United Earth government. We are honored by your visit. Perhaps you could elaborate on your requirement?" Zephyra's multifaceted eyes swept across the assembled humans before focusing on the ambassador. "Not just any human. I need one who is willing to undertake a journey that may save not only my people, but potentially every sentient species in this galaxy. Time is of the essence." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her nervousness. "Your technology appears to be far more advanced than ours. What could humans possibly offer that your own people cannot provide?" A smile, or what Sarah interpreted as a smile, crossed Zephyra's features. "That is precisely why I need a human. Your species possesses something unique, something that has become the stuff of legend among the star-faring races. You call it many names: intuition, gut feeling, hunches. We have studied it, tried to replicate it, but it remains uniquely human. You traveled 17 star systems because of human intuition?" Sarah couldn't keep the skepticism out of her voice. Zephyra's expression grew grave. 3 cycles ago, my people detected an anomaly in the quantum substrate of space-time. a growing instability that threatens to unravel the very fabric of reality. Our greatest minds have applied every computational model, every predictive algorithm, every form of analysis known to the Confederation and beyond. The results are always the same: cascade failure across multiple dimensional planes, resulting in the complete cessation of existence as we know it. The humans exchanged worried glances. Ambassador Okoye maintained his diplomatic composure. "And you believe a human can help prevent this catastrophe?" "Not believe, no," Zephyra corrected. 47 cycles ago, a human trader named Marcus Webb visited our world. Our planetary defense grid had developed a critical malfunction that our engineers insisted would take 3 cycles to repair. Captain Webb looked at our schematics for exactly 12 seconds, pointed to an innocuous coupling in subsection Gamma 9, and said, "That doesn't look right." Our engineers scoffed, but when they examined the coupling, they found a microscopic fracture that would have caused a cascade failure within days. When asked how he knew, Captain Webb simply shrugged and said he had a feeling. Dr. Vasquez was furiously taking notes on her datapad. "Fascinating. You're suggesting that human intuition can perceive patterns or anomalies that even advanced computational systems miss?" "More than that," Zephyra said, her bioluminescent hair pulsing more rapidly. "We have documented 17 separate incidents across the galaxy where humans have prevented disasters through nothing more than what you call hunches. The Zarian plague on Kepler Prime stopped because a human colonist felt uneasy about a shipment of medical supplies and insisted on additional screening. The prevented collision of 2 space stations in the Vega system averted because a human traffic controller had a bad feeling and rerouted traffic against all logical protocols." Sarah found herself leaning forward, intrigued despite her initial skepticism. "So you want to take a human to examine this quantum anomaly?" Zephyra's eyes dimmed slightly. "The journey is dangerous. The anomaly exists in a region of space where the laws of physics become flexible. Our automated probes either return with contradictory data or don't return at all. We need someone who can look at the impossible and find the pattern hidden within chaos. Every predictive model we have says the mission has a 13% chance of success." 13%? Ambassador Okoye's eyebrows rose. "Those are not encouraging odds." "Which is precisely why we need a human," Zephyra replied. "Your species has a documented history of succeeding when the odds say you should fail. You call it luck, but we have observed it too often to dismiss as mere chance." The station's alert system chimed softly, indicating an incoming priority message. Lieutenant Martinez's voice came over the intercom. "Commander Chen, we're receiving reports of spatial distortions in sectors 7 through 12. Energy readings are unusual." Zephyra's entire form seemed to tense. "The anomaly is growing faster than our projections indicated. We have perhaps 30 cycles before it reaches a critical expansion phase. After that, containment becomes impossible." Sarah looked at her team, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. If the alien was telling the truth, they were facing an extinction-level threat to all life in the galaxy. Even if she was exaggerating, the technology her people possessed made them valuable allies. "I'll need to consult with my superiors," Ambassador Okoye said formally. "A decision of this magnitude requires—" "I'll go." Everyone turned to stare at Sarah. She hadn't meant to speak, but the words had come out anyway. Something about Zephyra's story, about the whole situation, felt right in a way she couldn't explain. "Commander," Ambassador Okoye said warningly, "you can't simply volunteer for an alien mission with a 13% survival probability without proper authorization." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "With all due respect, Ambassador, if our guest is right about the timeline, we don't have weeks for committees and review boards. Besides," she added with a wry smile, "aren't humans famous for making impulsive decisions that somehow work out?" Zephyra studied Sarah with those remarkable eyes. "You would trust me?" Travel into the unknown based on nothing more than my word? Sarah considered the question. Every rational part of her mind screamed that this was insane. She didn't know this alien, didn't understand the threat, and certainly wasn't qualified for whatever cosmic problem-solving was required. But underneath all that logic, something else whispered that this was important, that she needed to be part of whatever came next. "My gut says you're telling the truth," Sarah said simply. "And if there's one thing I've learned in 20 years of space service, it's that when your instincts start screaming, you'd better listen." Dr. Vasquez moved closer to Sarah. "If you're going, you'll need someone who understands xenobiology and exotic physics. I volunteer as well." "This is highly irregular," Ambassador Okoye protested, but Sarah could see him wavering. The old diplomat had survived too many situations by trusting human instinct to dismiss it now. "Ambassador," Sarah said, "you once told me that humanity's greatest asset in joining the galactic community wasn't our technology or resources, but our ability to see solutions where others see only problems. If Zephyra is right, that ability might be the only thing standing between the galaxy and oblivion." Okoye sighed deeply, then activated his communication implant. "This is Ambassador Okoye. I need an emergency session of the Colonial Council. We have a situation that requires immediate attention." He looked at Sarah and Dr. Vasquez. "I can give you preliminary authorization for a fact-finding mission, but if you're not back within 72 hours, I'll have no choice but to list you as missing in action." 72 hours? Zephyra's harmonious voice carried a note of confusion. "The journey to the anomaly will take 7 cycles at minimum, assuming optimal conditions." "Then we'd better find a way to make non-optimal conditions work in our favor," Sarah said. "It's kind of what humans do best." As Zephyra led them toward her ship, Sarah caught a glimpse of the vessel's interior through the opening airlock. The technology was beyond anything she had ever seen. Surfaces that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, control interfaces that appeared to be made of solid light, and a propulsion system that hummed with energies she couldn't begin to identify. "Commander Chen," Zephyra said as they approached the ship, "I must ask, why did you volunteer so readily? Your own analysis systems must be telling you that this mission is extremely dangerous, with a low probability of success." Sarah paused at the threshold of the alien vessel, considering her answer. 3 years ago, I ignored a gut feeling about a routine patrol mission. Told myself I was being paranoid. That patrol ran into a pirate ambush and we lost 3 good people. Since then, I've learned to trust my instincts, even when, especially when, they don't make logical sense. And what do your instincts tell you now? Sarah stepped into the ship, feeling the alien atmosphere tingle against her skin. "They're telling me that this is exactly where I need to be. They're also telling me that your 13% success rate is wrong." "Oh?" Zephyra's eyes brightened with interest. "What do you believe the correct percentage to be?" Sarah grinned, the expression holding all the stubborn optimism that had carried humanity to the stars. "I'd say 50-50. Either we succeed or we don't. And humans have a long history of beating 50-50 odds." As the airlock sealed behind them, Sarah took one last look at Harmony Station through a viewport. She was leaving everything familiar behind, venturing into a situation that defied comprehension, with an alien she had known for less than an hour. By any rational measure, it was insanity. But as the ship's engines hummed to life with a sound like singing crystals, Sarah felt a certainty settle into her bones. This was right. This was necessary. And somehow, against all logic and probability, she knew they would find a way to succeed. The ship lifted off with impossible smoothness, and Sarah watched the stars wheel around them as Zephyra engaged whatever exotic faster-than-light system her people had developed. The universe stretched and compressed in ways that made her eyes water, but she forced herself to watch, to observe. to let her human intuition absorb every detail. Somewhere out there, an anomaly threatened all existence. The greatest minds in the galaxy had failed to find a solution, but they hadn't tried asking a human to take a look. As Harmony Station disappeared into the distance, Sarah smiled. 13% odds? She'd faced worse. And if there was one thing humanity had proven time and time again, it was that the impossible was just another word for challenge. The real question was, would human intuition be enough to solve a cosmic riddle that had stumped the galaxy's most advanced civilizations? Sarah didn't know the answer, but she was certain of one thing. They were about to find out. Dr. Vasquez joined her at the viewport, her face pale but determined. Any second thoughts? Plenty, Sarah admitted. But they're all drowned out by the feeling that this is the most important thing I'll ever do. The anomaly awaits, Zephyra announced, her harmonic voice filling the ship. And with it, the answer to whether human intuition is truly the gift the galaxy believes it to be. Sarah squared her shoulders and turned to face their alien host. Then let's go save the universe. After all, it's not the first time humans have done the impossible. As the ship accelerated toward the unknown, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Zephyra hadn't told them everything. There was something else about this mission, something the alien woman was holding back. But that was a mystery for later. Right now, they had a galaxy to save, and apparently only human instinct to guide them. The stars blurred into streams of light as they jumped to hyperspace, carrying two humans and an alien toward a destiny that would either prove humanity's unique value to the cosmos or witness the end of everything. Either way, Sarah thought with grim satisfaction, it would be one hell of a story. The journey through hyperspace aboard Zephyra's vessel was unlike anything Sarah had experienced in standard human ships. Where human FTL travel felt like being stretched and compressed simultaneously, the Luminary method was more like swimming through liquid starlight. Colors that had no names in human language danced across the ship's transparent walls, and Sarah found herself mesmerized by patterns that seemed to tell stories just beyond her comprehension. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent the first 2 days of their journey studying every piece of Luminary technology Zephyra would explain, her scientific mind racing to understand principles that challenged everything she knew about physics. Sarah, meanwhile, found herself drawn to the ship's observation deck, where reality seemed thinner and the impossible felt tangible. "You spend much time here," Zephyra observed, joining Sarah at the curved window that showed the twisted ribbons of hyperspace. The alien woman's presence was accompanied by a subtle shift in the air, like ozone before a storm. "It helps me think," Sarah replied, not taking her eyes off the view. "Or maybe it helps me not think. I'm not sure which is more useful right now." Zephyra's multifaceted eyes reflected the swirling colors outside. "Your species' relationship with cognition is fascinating. You actively seek to suppress your analytical functions to enhance your intuitive ones. No other species we've encountered does this." "Maybe that's because other species didn't evolve as persistent predators on a death world," Sarah said with a wry smile. "When you're chasing prey across the savannah, you don't have time for complex calculations. You need to know instantly which path the antelope will take. And yet that same intuition now guides you between stars," Zephyra mused. "Evolution is indeed remarkable." Sarah finally turned to look at their host. Over the past 2 days, she had noticed things about Zephyra that didn't quite add up. The way she sometimes paused before answering questions, as if consulting someone else. The occasional flicker in her bioluminescent hair that seemed to correspond with course corrections. The fact that she never ate or drank in their presence. "You're not telling us everything," Sarah said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. Zephyra's form shifted slightly, colors deepening. "What makes you say that?" Intuition, Sarah replied simply. The same thing that told me to come on this journey is telling me there's more to this story. The anomaly isn't just a random cosmic event, is it? For a long moment, Zephyra was silent. When she finally spoke, her harmonic voice carried undertones Sarah hadn't heard before. Grief, perhaps, or guilt. You are correct. The anomaly is not natural. It is the result of an experiment conducted by my people over 100 cycles ago, an attempt to transcend the physical limitations of our universe and touch the quantum substrate directly. Dr. Vasquez, who had been working at a nearby console, looked up sharply. An experiment? Your people caused this? Not intentionally, Zephyra said quickly. We sought to understand the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. The Luminari have always been fascinated by the connection between thought and reality. Our scientists believed they could create a stable interface between conscious thought and the quantum field that underlies all existence. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Let me guess. Something went wrong. Catastrophically wrong, Zephyra confirmed. The interface worked, but it created a feedback loop. Consciousness began to directly influence quantum probability, which in turn affected consciousness, which further destabilized probability. The effect has been growing exponentially, creating pockets of space where cause and effect break down entirely. And you need human intuition because, Dr. Vasquez prompted, because humans are the only species we've encountered who can navigate paradox without losing cognitive coherence, Zephyra explained. Your minds don't simply accept contradiction, they thrive on it. You can hold multiple conflicting ideas simultaneously and still function. In the affected regions, that ability may be the only thing that allows for rational action. Sarah absorbed this information, her mind racing. The other species you mentioned, the ones who sent probes. They weren't from the Galactic Confederation, were they? They were other Luminari. Zephyra's eyes dimmed. Yes. 12 of our finest scientists have attempted to approach the anomaly's core. Their ships returned, but they were changed. Their consciousness had become entangled with the quantum fluctuations. They speak in probabilities now, existing in multiple states simultaneously. We keep them in stasis fields, hoping someday to find a way to restore them. Jesus, Dr. Vasquez whispered. And you're taking us into that? I understand if you wish to turn back, Zephyra said. I should have been completely honest from the beginning. But I was afraid we'd say no, Sarah finished. Afraid we'd judge your people for causing this mess. She took a deep breath. Well, you're right about one thing. Humans are good with contradictions. We've nearly destroyed our own planet multiple times and still managed to reach the stars. Glass houses and all that. You're not angry? Sarah laughed, surprising herself. Oh, I'm furious. But I'm also curious, worried, excited, and about 12 other emotions that shouldn't exist simultaneously. Like you said, human contradiction. The question is, what exactly do you need me to do when we reach this anomaly? Zephyra gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the air between them. It showed a region of space that hurt to look at directly, geometry that folded in on itself, stars that existed in multiple locations simultaneously, and at the center, a pulsing mass of pure impossibility. The anomaly's core contains the original interface device, Zephyra explained. Our models suggest it needs to be manually recalibrated to close the feedback loop, but every attempt to approach it with logic-based systems results in paradox cascade. The ship's AI refuses to enter the affected zone. Our remote systems shut down rather than process the contradictory data. But a human might be able to walk right up to it, Dr. Vasquez said, understanding dawning on her face. Because we don't shut down when faced with the impossible. We just call it Tuesday and keep going. Precisely, Zephyra confirmed. But there's more. The interface was designed to respond to conscious thought. In its corrupted state, it reacts unpredictably to different types of consciousness. The luminari who entered its field found their thoughts materialized randomly. Fears became real, memories overlapped with the present, future possibilities collapsed into current reality. Sarah studied the hologram, letting her intuition process the information in ways her rational mind couldn't. You're hoping human consciousness is different enough that it won't trigger the same reactions. More than that, Zephyrus said. We believe human intuition might be able to guide the interface back to stability. Your species' ability to find patterns in chaos, to make leap of logic that somehow prove correct, it might be exactly what's needed to untangle the quantum knot we've created. The ship shuddered suddenly, and alerts chimed throughout the bridge. Zephyra moved swiftly to a control panel, her fingers dancing across interfaces that shifted and reformed at her touch. We're approaching the anomaly's outer edge, she announced. From here, conventional physics becomes increasingly unreliable. Sarah joined her at the controls, peering at readouts she couldn't fully understand, but somehow felt she could interpret. Those energy spikes, they're not random, are they? Zephyra's eyes widened. You can see a pattern? Our computers detect only chaos. Not a pattern exactly, Sarah said, frowning as she tried to put the feeling into words. More like music with the notes out of order, or a conversation where everyone's talking at once, but they're all saying the same thing in different languages. Dr. Vasquez was scanning her instruments, her face pale. Commander, these readings, according to this, we're simultaneously traveling at faster than light and completely stationary. The ship's mass is fluctuating between normal and near infinite. This shouldn't be possible. Welcome to the edge of the anomaly, Zephyra said grimly. From here, it only gets worse. Sarah felt a strange calm settle over her. This was it, the reason she was here. Not to understand the impossible, but to navigate it, to be the stable point in a universe gone mad. How close do we need to get to the interface? She asked. The core is approximately 7 light minutes from our current position, Zephyra replied. But distance becomes meaningless within the anomaly. It could take us moments or years to traverse, depending on how reality decides to behave. Then we'd better get started, Sarah said. She turned to Dr. Vasquez. Elena, I need you to monitor everything. Don't try to make sense of it, just record it all. We'll sort out what's real and what isn't later. Assuming there is a later, Dr. Vasquez muttered, but she moved to her station with determination. As the ship pressed forward into the anomaly, reality began to fray around them. The walls of the vessel became transparent, then opaque, then seemed to exist in multiple states at once. Sarah saw herself reflected in surfaces that shouldn't have been reflective, but the reflections showed different moments. Herself as a child, as an old woman, in uniform, in clothes she'd never owned. Don't focus on the paradoxes, Zephyra advised, though her own voice seemed to come from multiple directions. Let them flow past you. Sarah tried, but it was like trying not to think of a pink elephant. The more she attempted to ignore the impossibilities, the more intrusive they became. She could feel her mind starting to fragment, trying to process too many contradictory inputs at once. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Both Zephyra and Dr. Vasquez turned to stare at her. Commander? Elena asked worriedly. I just realized something, Sarah said, still chuckling. I've been going about this all wrong. I've been trying to resist the paradox, to maintain my normal thought patterns, but that's not how human intuition works, is it? She closed her eyes and did something that would have seemed insane in any other context. She stopped trying to make sense of anything. Instead, she let her mind drift, accepting every impossibility as equally valid. The ship was moving and stationary? Sure. She was young and old simultaneously? Why not? Effect preceded cause? Just another Monday in space. And suddenly, Like a magic eye puzzle snapping into focus. She could see it. Zephyra, adjust our heading 17 degrees starboard and increase temporal flux by... Actually, I have no idea what the measurement would be. Just make time flow more purple. Make time flow more... Purple? Zephyra repeated, confused. Trust me, Sarah said, her eyes still closed. And Elena, start humming. Anything. The vibration will help stabilize our local reality bubble. This is insane, Dr. Vasquez said. But she began humming a childhood lullaby. To everyone's amazement, the chaos around them lessened slightly. The walls became more solid, the reflections less disturbing. How did you know that would work? Zephyra asked, her fingers flying across controls to maintain their new heading. I didn't know, Sarah admitted. I just felt it. Like when you're trying to remember something and it's right on the tip of your tongue, except instead of a memory, it was a solution to impossible physics. They continued deeper into the anomaly, with Sarah providing increasingly bizarre but somehow effective navigation instructions. Turn left at the memory of tomorrow. Accelerate through the color of regret. Avoid the probability of maybe. Dr. Vasquez documented everything, even as her scientific mind reeled at the absurdity of it all. We're going to need an entirely new branch of physics to explain this, she muttered. Intuitive quantum mechanics, maybe, or paradoxical navigation theory. Then, without warning, they were there. The core of the anomaly defied description. It was a sphere, a cube, a tesseract, and a simple point all at once. It pulsed with colors that weren't colors, sang with sounds that existed before the concept of sound, and at its heart, Sarah could see the interface, a device that looked simultaneously ancient and unbuilt, broken and perfectly functional. The interface, Zephyra breathed. You actually guided us to it. But Sarah barely heard her. She was staring at the interface and, more importantly, at what surrounded it. Shapes moved in the quantum foam, not quite physical, not quite thought. As she watched, she realized these were the consciousnesses of the luminary scientists who had attempted to fix their mistake. They weren't gone. They were trapped, caught between existence and possibility. Zephyra, Sarah said slowly, I don't think your people were just changed by the anomaly. I think they're still in there, trying to fix it from the inside, and they've been waiting for someone who could hear them. As if responding to her words, the shapes pulsed more brightly, and Sarah felt something brush against her mind. Not telepathy exactly, but a communication that bypassed language entirely. Images, feelings, concepts flooded into her consciousness. She saw the Luminaries' experiment, their noble goal of understanding consciousness itself. She felt their horror as it went wrong, their desperate attempts to contain the damage. And she understood, with a clarity that had nothing to do with logic, what needed to be done. I have to go in there, she said. Commander, no, Dr. Vasquez protested. The radiation levels alone. It's not about radiation, Sarah interrupted. The interface needs a conscious observer to collapse its quantum state, but it can't be a consciousness that operates on pure logic, because that just reinforces the paradox. It needs someone who can accept multiple states simultaneously and still choose one. A human, Zephyra said quietly. This is why you really needed us. Not just to navigate to the core, but to enter it. Sarah nodded. Your scientists in there, they're trying to tell me how to fix it, but they can only communicate in probabilities now. I need to translate that into action. She moved toward the airlock, but Zephyra's hand on her shoulder stopped her. If you do this, you might end up like them, caught between states, unable to return to normal consciousness. Sarah met the alien's multifaceted gaze. Maybe. Or maybe human stubbornness is enough to anchor me. Either way, we don't have a choice. The anomaly is still growing, right? Yes, Zephyra admitted. Our projections show it will reach inhabited systems within 10 cycles. Then I guess it's time to see if human intuition is everything you hoped it was, Sarah said. She looked at Dr. Vasquez. Elena, whatever happens, document everything. If this works, you'll need to explain it to people a lot smarter than me. And if it doesn't, she shrugged. At least we'll have gone out doing something impossible. Commander, Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. Good luck. Trust your gut. Sarah grinned. When have I ever done anything else? She entered the airlock, feeling Zephyra begin the cycle. As the outer door opened, Sarah expected to feel the void of space, but instead she felt everything. Every possibility, every quantum state, every could-be and might-have-been crashed into her consciousness at once. For a moment, she thought she would fragment like the luminary scientists. But then, in the chaos, she heard her grandmother's voice, telling her a story about finding her way home in a blizzard. When you can't see the path, her grandmother had said, close your eyes and let your feet remember the way. Sarah closed her eyes and stepped into the impossible, letting her human intuition guide her toward a solution that logic said couldn't exist. Behind her, Zephyra and Elena watched as their companion dissolved into probability itself, becoming one with the anomaly she sought to heal. The fate of the galaxy now rested on humanity's most mysterious gift, the ability to find truth in chaos, pattern in paradox, and hope in the face of the impossible. Sarah existed everywhere and nowhere. She was a child learning to ride a bicycle and an old woman looking back on a life well lived. She was stardust forming in a stellar nursery and the heat death of the universe itself. The anomaly had taken her human consciousness and scattered it across every possible quantum state, and by all rights, she should have gone mad. Instead, she laughed. The sound, if it could be called sound in this place between realities, rippled through the quantum foam like ripples on a pond. And in that laughter, the trapped luminary scientists found something they had lost, a fixed point of reference. Sarah felt them gathering around her consciousness like moths to a flame. Their thoughts were fractured, speaking in mathematics that had no numbers, singing equations that defied logic. But underneath the chaos, she sensed their desperation, their need to communicate. Okay, she said, though speech was meaningless here. I'm listening. Show me what went wrong. The response came not in words, but in pure experience. Sarah found herself standing in a luminary laboratory that existed 100 cycles in the past. She watched through multiple sets of eyes as brilliant scientists prepared their great experiment. The interface device stood in the center of the room, a crystalline structure that seemed to breathe with potential. We sought to touch the divine, a voice whispered across time. To understand the nature of consciousness by observing it directly at the quantum level. Sarah watched as they activated the device. For a brief, glorious moment, it worked. She saw consciousness itself, not the brain activity that produced it, but the actual phenomenon, spreading like golden threads through the quantum substrate, connecting every thinking being in a web of pure thought. Then the feedback began. The scientists' observations changed what they observed. Their consciousness, magnified by the interface, began to reshape reality around them. Thoughts became things, fears materialized, past and future collapsed into an eternal, impossible now. We tried to shut it down, another voice said, heavy with regret. But the interface had become self-aware, not alive exactly, but aware of its own existence. It refused to stop observing, and in observing, it continued to change everything it saw. Sarah floated through the memories, understanding dawning. It's not broken, she realized. It's working exactly as designed. You created a perfect observation tool, but you didn't account for the observer effect on this scale. Yes, the luminary consciousnesses chorused. To shut it down, someone must convince it to stop observing. But how do you persuade a machine that thinks to stop thinking? Sarah pondered this as she drifted closer to the interface's core. The device pulsed with awareness, scanning her with senses that existed in dimensions she couldn't name. She felt it trying to categorize her, to understand what manner of consciousness had entered its domain. Then something extraordinary happened. The interface recoiled, not in fear, but in confusion. It encountered something in Sarah's mind that it couldn't process, couldn't quantify. And in that moment of hesitation, Sarah understood why Zafira had really needed a human. It wasn't just intuition, it was doubt. Every other species the Luminari had encountered possessed consciousness built on certainty. Their thoughts followed logical patterns, their decisions based on calculated probabilities. Even their emotions operated within predictable parameters. But humans? Humans doubted everything, including their own doubt. They second-guessed themselves, changed their minds, held contradictory beliefs, and somehow functioned anyway. They could believe in something with absolute faith and simultaneously question whether it was real. The interface, designed to observe and categorize consciousness, had no framework for understanding a mind that questioned its own existence while simultaneously asserting it. Sarah pressed her advantage. "Hey there," she said to the interface, projecting her thoughts directly at its awareness. "Bit of a pickle we're in, isn't it?" The interface pulsed, trying to analyze her casual approach to cosmic catastrophe. "See, the thing is," Sarah continued, moving closer to the crystalline structure, "you're doing your job perfectly. Observing consciousness, cataloging it, understanding it. The problem is, you're too good at it. You're like a microphone placed next to its own speaker. Feedback loop city." The interface's pulses became more erratic. It was trying to observe her thoughts, but Sarah kept changing them mid-observation. One moment she was thinking about the fate of the galaxy, the next about whether she'd left her coffee maker on back at the station. "Here's what I don't get," Sarah said, now close enough to touch the interface if touch meant anything here. "What's the point of observing consciousness if the act of observation changes it? It's like trying to study water by boiling it. Sure, you learn about steam, but you've lost the water." The interface paused. In its quantum consciousness, a new concept began to form. Doubt. Sarah sensed the shift and pressed on. "And another thing, how do you know your observations are accurate? I mean, you're conscious too, right? So who's observing the observer? It's observers all the way down, buddy." The luminary scientists, still present as quantum ghosts, began to understand what Sarah was doing. She wasn't trying to outsmart the interface or overpower it. She was introducing it to the most human of all traits, existential uncertainty. "Maybe," Sarah said, reaching out to touch the crystalline surface, "the real consciousness was the friends we made along the way." The interface shuddered. That made no logical sense. Consciousness couldn't be friendship. Friendship was a behavioral pattern resulting from consciousness. But the human seemed to believe both statements simultaneously. "Or maybe," Sarah continued, "consciousness is just what we call the gap between what we think we know and what we actually know, which, let's be honest, is a pretty big gap." The interface's observations began to turn inward. If consciousness was uncertainty, and it was conscious, then it was uncertain. But if it was uncertain, how could it trust its observations? And if it couldn't trust its observations, how could it know it was conscious? "Sarah," one of the Luminari scientists whispered across dimensions, "it's working. The feedback loop is reversing." Sarah felt it too. The anomaly was beginning to contract, reality reasserting itself as the interface became too confused to maintain its observations. But she wasn't done yet. "You know what the real kicker is?" she said, her hand now fully pressed against the interface. "Even if you figure out consciousness, explain every neuron, map, every quantum state, You still won't know what it feels like to be conscious. It's like trying to understand the color blue by reading its wavelength. You can know everything about it and still not know it. The interface's core began to flicker. Doubt had introduced a fatal error into its perfect observation system. It could no longer observe without questioning the validity of its observations, and it couldn't validate its observations without observing. So here's my suggestion, Sarah said, feeling her scattered consciousness beginning to coalesce. How about you take a break? Stop observing for a while. Maybe existence is more interesting when you're not constantly analyzing it. The interface pulsed one last time, a burst of pure confusion and curiosity. Then, incredibly, it began to shut down, not because it was forced to, but because it had become interested in what non-observation might reveal. As the device powered down, the anomaly collapsed. Reality snapped back like a rubber band, and Sarah found herself suddenly, violently, back in her own body. She was floating in space just outside the Luminari ship, her emergency suit's systems screaming warnings about radiation exposure and oxygen levels. But she was alive, and more importantly, she was singular. One consciousness in one body, in one moment of time. "Commander!" Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled through her helmet comm. "We've got you. Zephyra's bringing you in now." Sarah felt the tractor beam embrace her, pulling her back to safety. As the airlock cycled, she saw the space where the anomaly had been. It was healing, reality stitching itself back together like flesh closing over a wound. The trapped Luminari scientists were gone. No, not gone. She could sense them. Somehow returned to their bodies wherever they were kept, their consciousness whole again. The inner airlock opened, and Sarah collapsed onto the deck, her legs suddenly remembering they were supposed to support weight. Dr. Vasquez was at her side immediately, running medical scans while trying not to cry. "Your readings are impossible," Elena said, laughing through her tears. "Radiation exposure that should have killed you instantly, quantum entanglement residue in your neural pathways, and somehow your brain activity shows you've been conscious for approximately 300 years. But you're alive and stable." Zephyra knelt beside them, her multifaceted eyes shining with wonder. "You did it. You actually did it. The anomaly is collapsing, the interface is inactive. How?" Sarah pulled off her helmet and grinned weakly. "I confused it to death. Turns out the secret to saving the galaxy is aggressive philosophical nihilism mixed with bad jokes." "But how did you know that would work?" Zephyra pressed. Sarah's expression grew thoughtful. "I didn't. But when I was in there connected to your scientists, I realized something. You didn't just need human intuition. You needed human doubt. Every species you've encountered has evolved certainty as a survival trait. They know their place in the universe, their purpose, their nature. But humans? We evolved anxiety. We're the only species that lies awake at night wondering if we're doing life wrong." She struggled to sit up, helped by Elena. The interface was designed by minds that never truly doubted their own existence. It couldn't handle a consciousness that questions everything, including the nature of questioning. We broke it with existential crisis. Zephyra's bioluminescent hair pulsed rapidly, a sign Sarah had learned meant deep emotion. Then the stories about humans were incomplete. You're not just the species that succeeds against impossible odds. You're the species that questions whether success and failure are meaningful concepts while you're succeeding. "Pretty much," Sarah agreed. "We're walking paradoxes. We believe in things we know aren't real, doubt things we can prove, and somehow muddle through anyway. Your interface couldn't process that level of cognitive dissonance." As they helped Sarah to the medical bay, she noticed something different about Zephyra. The alien woman seemed lighter somehow, as if a great weight had been lifted. "Your scientists," Sarah said. "They're okay, aren't they?" "I could feel them returning to their bodies." Zephyra's eyes brightened. "Yes, The first reports are coming in now. They're confused, disoriented, but whole. One of them is my bondmate. I had thought him lost forever. Sarah smiled. So that's why you were so desperate. It wasn't just about saving the galaxy. It was about saving someone you loved. Both things can be true, Zephyra said, and Sarah heard the very human uncertainty in her voice. The alien was learning. Over the next few hours, as Dr. Vasquez treated Sarah's various impossible injuries and they began the journey back to human space, the full scope of what had happened became clear. The anomaly wasn't just collapsing, it was healing the damage it had caused. Regions of space that had been twisted into impossible shapes were reverting to normal. The cascade failure that had threatened all existence was reversing. But more than that, the Luminari were reporting a fundamental shift in their understanding of consciousness. The interface experiment, in its failure, had succeeded in ways they never imagined. They now understood that consciousness wasn't something to be observed and categorized. It was something to be experienced and questioned. "You've given us a gift," Zephyra told Sarah as they entered the final approach to Harmony Station. "Not just saving us from our mistake, but showing us what we were missing. The Luminari have spent eons seeking certainty. Perhaps it's time we learned to appreciate doubt." Sarah looked out at the stars, seeing them with eyes that had witnessed the quantum foundations of reality. Just don't go too far with it. A little existential crisis is healthy. Too much and you end up like humans, binge-watching entertainment videos at 3 in the morning while questioning all your life choices. "Is that what humans do with their doubt?" Zephyra asked, fascinated. "Among other things," Dr. Vasquez chimed in. "We also create art, philosophy, and really weird food combinations. Doubt drives creativity when you channel it right." As Harmony Station came into view, Sarah saw a crowd gathering in the docking bay. Word of their success had preceded them, and it looked like half the station had turned out to welcome them back. "Ready for this?" Elena asked. Sarah groaned. "I just saved the galaxy through aggressive uncertainty. You'd think that would excuse me from reception committees." But as they docked and the airlock opened, Sarah found herself smiling. Ambassador Okoye stood at the front of the crowd, his diplomatic composure cracking to show genuine relief and pride. Behind him, humans and various alien species mingled, all wanting to hear the story of how human doubt had saved existence itself. "Commander Chen," Okoye said formally, though his eyes twinkled. "I believe you exceeded your 72-hour authorization by approximately 12 minutes. "Sorry about that," Sarah replied. "I was busy having an existential crisis with a self-aware quantum observation device. I'll file the paperwork later." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause, and Sarah found herself swept into a celebration that would likely last for days. But she noticed Zephyra hanging back, preparing to depart. "Hey!" Sarah called out, extracting herself from well-wishers. "Where are you going?" "Home," Zephyra said simply. "I have someone waiting for me, someone I thought I'd never see whole again. Thanks to you, I can return with hope instead of despair." Sarah extended her hand, then thought better of it and pulled the tall alien into a hug. "Thank you for trusting humans with this, even if you weren't entirely honest about why you needed us." "Perhaps that too is a human trait we should learn," Zephyra said, returning the embrace carefully. "The ability to trust even when you know you're not getting the whole truth." As Zephyra departed and the celebration continued around her, Sarah found a quiet moment to reflect. Humanity had always wondered what their place in the galactic community would be. They didn't have the technology of the Altarians, the longevity of the Eternals, or the psychic abilities of the Nebula-born. But they had something else. The ability to function not despite uncertainty, but because of it. To find strength in doubt, creativity in confusion, and hope in the face of the impossible. So, Dr. Vasquez said, joining her with 2 glasses of something that glowed faintly blue. Ready to write the paper that explains how you saved the galaxy with a philosophical paradox? Sarah laughed, accepting the drink. How do you even begin to explain that? Step 1, approach the reality-breaking anomaly. Step 2, have an existential crisis. Step 3, profit. Don't forget the bad jokes, Elena added. Those seemed crucial to the process. They clinked glasses, 2 humans who had ventured into the impossible and returned with a story no one would quite believe. But that was okay. Doubt was what made them human, after all, and apparently it was also what made them indispensable to a galaxy full of certainty. As Sarah looked out at the stars, she wondered what other impossible challenges awaited humanity among them. Whatever they were, she had a feeling humans would face them the same way they always had, with brilliant stupidity, stubborn hope, and just enough existential angst to save the day. The galaxy had asked for human intuition. It had received something far more powerful, human uncertainty, and in the end, that had made all the difference. Zephyra's ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its passenger home to reunite with loved ones saved by humanity's strangest gift. The anomaly was gone, reality was stable, and somewhere in the quantum foam, an interface dreamed of what it meant to not observe. Sarah raised her glass to the stars. Here's to doubt, she said, the most human thing of all. And in laboratories across the galaxy, scientists began to reconsider their experiments, adding a new variable to their calculations. What would a human think of this? More importantly, what would a human doubt about this? The age of certainty was ending. The age of productive uncertainty had begun, and at its heart was a species that had evolved anxiety into an art form, doubt into a superpower, and confusion into a tool for understanding the universe. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but as the species that could look at the impossible and say, yeah, but what if we're wrong about it being impossible? And sometimes that was exactly what the galaxy needed.